To our honorary degree recipients, alumni and trustees, to our faculty and staff, to our parents, family members and friends, and most especially to our graduates, welcome to the Johns Hopkins University Commencement for the great class of 2015. Now, before beginning my formal remarks, I should just pick up on what Chair Aronson said a few minutes ago when he shouted out to his daughter, Nicole, who is graduating today, and he referenced a moment last year, which is still discussed somewhat in our family, when Drew was graduating and was sitting somewhere over there, and I asked him to stand up at about this time so I could recognize him. And I only learned afterwards that when he sat down, a guy sitting next to him, whom Drew had never met before, looked over him and said, "Man, that was brutal." You are going to be in therapy for years. And so Nicole, where are you, Nicole? Nicole, could you just stand up and wave so I can see you? Nicole? Nicole, Claire? Nicole, remember this always. Your dad did not do this to you. Nicole, you can sit down. Now, today I want to talk about stories, yours and ours. Each of us sees ourselves, not surprisingly, as a protagonist of our story. So it's natural to assume your stories begin and end with you. At Hopkins, you experienced some seismic shifts, literally. You entered the university during a hurricane and then an earthquake, and showed typical Hopkins inventiveness and initiative by substituting regularly scheduled, mandatory, I dare say, orientation activities with mudslides on the beach. In your ensuing 4 years, Brody Atrium replaced the A-level. Air conditioning came to the AMRs, a truly remarkable feat of advanced engineering than one could not even dream about. And most importantly, kale chips briefly bumped Doritos off of the Charmar shelves. These were times of great moment, clearly. Now, more seriously, your college years are ending at a time that is once again seismic. Each of us who learns, works, and lives here in Baltimore has been touched in some way by the unrest that roiled our city just before your final exams began. Recently, in a jam-packed Shriver Hall here on the campus, journalist and West Baltimore native Ta-Nehisi Coates spoke about race in America and the legacy of generations of discrimination that has emanated from our country's founding flaw of violent enslavement. He observed that we enter the grand narratives of our time midstream. The stories don't start with us. Other characters were there before. Decisions were made. Dynamics unleashed. Ideas, cultures, and systems are already deeply entrenched. Coates reminded us that the root causes of the rage we saw that night in April are not only of this moment and will not be changed quickly. The complex and pernicious matrix of discriminatory housing policy, disparate educational opportunity, and mass incarceration has lasted decades and will not be undone without sustained and determined effort. A few days after Baltimore's unrest, I confided my concerns about the situation in our city to my dearest friend and mentor who lives back in Canada. He listened attentively as I enumerated in some detail the various challenges buffeting Baltimore. And then, when I finished, he uttered two simple words: critical junctures. Now, perhaps the import of that phrase is not self-evident. I'll concede that. Nor is the sense of radical possibility it conveys. So let me explain. It starts with the social scientist's idea of path dependency. This is a very well-established concept in the social science literature. And the idea is simply that policies, institutions, and customs arise in response to a certain set of so-called starting conditions. And even when those starting conditions recede and are no longer relevant, the policies, institutions, and customs that were created in their shadow and which were long ago outdated and perhaps unjust tend to persist, sometimes over decades, sometimes even over centuries. And this is so because people become rooted in these familiar paths, rather than endure the disruptions, the costs of, and adjustments to what is desirable change. They will opt to stick with what they know. They will opt for the status quo. And yet, every so often, we arrive at a moment that is so wrenching, so deeply unsettling, that it makes a status quo untenable, and there is an opening for real and profound reform. Not even the heavy weight of history can thwart its logic. These are critical junctures. And when they happen, all bets are off. Suddenly, the seemingly inexorable flow and rhythm of the story halts, and we have the chance to break with the past and change the course of the narrative. We can get off the path. The unrest of late April sparked a critical juncture here in Baltimore, and the response we see in our city reveals and will reveal much about the character of our community. Yes, our city's challenges, like our nation's, are daunting, complex, and persistent, but there is now a sense of palpable possibility. Things can, things must change. And so, over the last several weeks, I have seen glimmers of the movement, of the instinct, the yearning for change. Baltimoreans of all stripes are talking, they're convening, they're organizing, they're dreaming with fierce determination and a can-do scrappiness to embrace the imperative for reform in so many different contexts. More summer jobs for our city's youth, better schools and skill development programs, and criminal justice reforms, to name a few. And I believe that sustained change is possible so long as our collective resolve and shared optimism holds firm, that we are unshakable in our commitment to change. In 1 year's time, imagine the progress we could make. Imagine the excitement and hope we could unleash if we were to show that here in Baltimore, we began to bring better health, better education, and more jobs to our most challenged neighborhoods. That would truly be a national news story of note. For those of you who are staying in Baltimore, let's seize this moment together. Your city needs your ideas, your energy, and your optimism. For those of you who are going elsewhere, know this. Though critical junctures don't happen often, they can happen anywhere and anytime. And graduates, your role, Hopkins Education in Hand, is to be open to that moment and embrace the radical possibility it entails. No matter where or when you enter a story, your critical thinking will allow you to build better institutions and policies. Your research will build or bring better health to vulnerable populations, and your artistry will compel us to more deeply understand our common humanity. And so, when the moment arrives and you face a critical juncture, we need you to be vigorous, bold, and smart in championing the truths you have discovered and which you hold dear. We are so proud of you all. Godspeed and congratulations to the great class of 2015.